CTBK gives executives and owners of mid-market businesses unparalleled confidence and clarity so you can focus on strategic objectives and organizational success. Their multidisciplinary advisors, accountants, and team members have a wealth of experience and are all available and responsive to each client to ensure the most effective advice, actions, and outcomes no matter the situation or complexity level. That experience base and one-team approach, combined with integrated and efficient way of operating, enable them to be truly proactive partners, doing the best thing for their client every time. Visit ctbk.com or call 716-630-2400 to learn how CTBK can work for you.
You are hate listening to Tim Graham and Friends.
Welcome to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with my co-host Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Sports Plus. And a lot of sports to talk about, a lot of pluses. The Bills coming off that 35-10 loss on Sunday night, about to head into NRG Stadium to face the Houston Texans and Stefon Diggs, the Von Miller suspension. A lot of injuries to talk about and how they might impact the Bills. Most notably, I think, Khalil Shakir and his right ankle injury from Baltimore. He hasn't been practicing. Ed Oliver, left tackle Deion Dawkins. The Bills might be getting Terrell Bernard and or Taron Johnson back against the Texans. So where do you want to start with this situation, Joan? I don't want to just say for the game on Sunday, but let's include Sunday night also, a spanking in Baltimore that the Bills took after looking like a world beater, albeit against lesser competition, but people were talking about the Bills as maybe the best team in the league and different media outlets having the Bills as atop their power rankings. And now Baltimore looking like they were struggling for the first couple of games in the season, wondering what's wrong with John Harbaugh's Ravens. And lo and behold, they just walloped the Bills from their opening play from scrimmage, never really looked back. Again, 35-10. It was no doubt, with the exception of a glimmer of hope that the Bills were handed by the Ravens, and they choked it away with that stupid gadget play that Joe Brady called. And it was not only the timing was bad, the execution was awful. So there's a lot of blame to go around with the players too. But where do you want to start with the situation that the Bills are in right now, heading into Houston at 3-1?
Well, I think specific to the game last week, it was pretty ugly to watch. Derrick Henry running untouched to the end zone on the very first time he touches the ball, and how easily the Ravens ran the ball and moved the ball in the first half. And they got away from that running game and gave the Bills some opportunity to get closer in the second half. But it really did seem like that whenever the Ravens would want to, they would be able to control the clock and control the ball and keep running it down the Bills' throat. Expose, I think, some weaknesses in the Bills' defense, run defense, which most weeks in the NFL, teams aren't going to exploit that. But when you have trouble stopping the run, all of a sudden teams seems to find their fullback and their second tight end and their willingness to run the ball against teams that are lighter up front and maybe can't stop them from running the ball.
The Ravens happen to have an elite fullback and depth at tight end, so that didn't help, in addition to a quarterback who can run and one of the great running backs of this generation. And you mentioned the defense being exposed. I think there's also, we should note, the erosion finally showing of those injuries, of Balin Spector being out there on the field, of maybe too many UB guys out there on the field with all the various injuries on defense.
Yeah, and even more injuries. Taylor Rapp getting hurt in that game and going down to backup safety, rookie Cole Bishop thrown into action. And he's been back for a few weeks, but he hasn't had a full preseason and training camp to really get ready for this moment because of his own injuries.
Yeah, how do you feel about a Taylor how do you feel about a Cole Bishop, DeMar Hamlin safety duo?
I feel like calling Micah Hyde and seeing what he's doing. I mean, DeMar Hamlin's played pretty well, and he's been around this team and this organization long enough that he is a veteran, and I don't know how much you're really worried about him back there. but it does seem like they've lost several layers of leadership. You know how when people get laid off or bought out in newspapers and we talk about the institutional knowledge and just not having them around anymore to lean on and tell the younger reporters what to do. It seems like the Bills have really lost a lot of that, and they have the young players are now the old players in a lot of these spots, and maybe losing something of a intangible effect by not having, so many of these mainstays and older players, and in some ways better players, all pro players that are either off the team or injured or not out there in that game against the Ravens or some of the games lately. I think the biggest concern coming out of that game, if I was a Bills fan, is that you might have to see this team again, and it might look like a really bad matchup because of Baltimore's running game and Derrick Henry. And it reminds me of a few years ago when the Bills were one of the best teams in the AFC, but it seemed like they might have a really hard time with the Tennessee Titans because of Derrick Henry and a really strong running game, and a team that was committed to running the ball against the Bills defense that is really built to be excellent against the pass and hasn't been great against the run most of these years under Sean McDermott. I think that's just built into the style of nickel defense and defensive linemen that they prefer. On balance, I think the Bills at 3-1 and how great they looked in some of those early wins and how tremendous Josh Allen has played until he was under duress a lot in this game. I think you can't be too down on the Bills' ability to win a lot of games, and probably once again, I think the favorites to win the division and possibly have home playoff games and be one of the 2 or 3 or 4 contending teams in the end. And then it comes down to matchups and injuries and who you play when in the playoffs. And I think that's a good. I wanted to say this last week when they were 3-0, and maybe it means a little less now, but I still think it's true. This wasn't one of these years where, it's Super Bowl or bust, and the Bills are going for it, and they have all their chips in the basket. This was a bit of a reset year with what they did with the roster and the dead cap money, and put some of these injuries on top of that. And there was a lot of outside perception that the Bills were sliding back. And I think the Bills just not being a bad team, or the Bills not really sliding back, being a route where they probably would have been with the team last year, is a positive development. And I think should be less anxiety and more joy from the fan base, and that not every loss is a referendum on whether this team is going to fulfill its potential and get to the Super Bowl. It's a regular season, and you win some and you lose some, and the Bills are winning more often than they're losing and probably going to continue along that trend.
Let's factor into that equation what's happening around the AFC East. Everybody looks awful, with the exception of the Bills, and whatever concerns that a Bills fan might have about a weakness here against the run or a matchup situation, I don't think that, at least what we've seen through 4 games, that any of that is going to carry itself as a common thread throughout the course of the season from a game-to-game basis. It's going to be, again, matchup based. Styles make fights, to borrow a boxing metaphor. The Patriots, no good. The Jets struggling and apparently in crisis mode with their quarterback and their head coach, and players wanting out. Maybe they bolster things through trade with Devontae Adams. There's talk of him preferring to go to the Jets, although he doesn't have total control over that. The Las Vegas Raiders get to make the deal with whatever team's going to give them the best offer. And then the Dolphins. Holy smokes. That team is just lost without Tua Tagovailoa, and they just looked like horseshit the other night. And so I think that the Bills are that was not a Styles makes fights situation on Monday night with the Dolphins. That was just a team that could not execute. They looked bad on both sides of the ball. And of course, when you're down to Huntley as your quarterback, but Tyreek Hill, there are weapons on that team. Mike McDaniel, offensive genius, as your head coach. Isn't he supposed to be able to scheme some ways for Tyreek Hill and Devin Achane and Jalen Waddle to be able to get the ball and do something, to have some sort of semblance of a threat to get a first down or to extend a drive or get points when needed? The Dolphins, it's great for the Bills. And of all the years that the Bills had where they, even when they were semi-competitive, but couldn't get over the hump against the mighty New England Patriots and whatever else was happening in that division, with the Dolphins pulling the Wildcat out one year or Rex Ryan's Jets getting to back-to-back AFC conference or AFC title games. The Bills had some decent teams in that drought, but now it's the other way around. Maybe it's time for the Bills to have a down season by their standards, a soft reset, and to still be comfortably the best team in the AFC East. I think that speaks to the organization and how far it's come.
Yeah, and if in your soft reset down year, you still win the division, you still get at least one home playoff game, you still win, let's say 10, 11 games, and that's your floor. And how young the Bills are overall and in certain spots, and with the draft picks they have coming in and some cap relief or a cleaner cap sheet going forward, there's talk about whether the Bills have taken advantage of the window with Josh Allen, or if it's closing, or if it's opening, or where it's at. I think it feels like to me like this is the start of a new window. There's a lot of new players and a lot of new circumstances, but Josh Allen is still in his prime, that they didn't win in that past window with that team and that all those great players on defense. And now they're rebuilding a new core around Josh Allen, but because he still has at least 4 or 5 good years, and they're going to have to give him a big, big new contract at some point, but they're not there yet. So they aren't paying the ultimate $50 million a year quarterback contract that some other teams are, that they now have an opportunity to really get this team going into being contenders next year or the year after or something like that. And maybe it happens this year. It just feels like they don't have quite enough to be one of the best teams standing in the end, between the moves they made in the offseason and the injuries. But with some of these injuries, Matt Milano could be back by the playoffs. Maybe the Bills, the best version of the Bills, is still to come in December and January.
How many Super Bowls did the Patriots win with Randy Moss? 0. There are all kinds of ways to put your offense together, and the Patriots had various iterations of that where it was a defensive-minded team, and Tom Brady had to be a game manager earlier in his career, and then they went with high-octane offense to give Tom Brady all the weapons, and then they moved through all sorts of phases in which they went through plug and play, interchangeable parts, all this type of thing. And they won a lot of Super Bowls in a lot of different ways. So it's not as though you look at this or there's a temptation to say, man, we're going to miss Stefon Diggs and he's going to rub it in our face on Sunday. We're really going to feel it. This everybody eats coming out of this Ravens game did not look like it was very effective. Josh running for his life, had more throwaways. 4 of them, by the way, had more throwaways than he had targets to Cook and Knox, and there were a couple other players involved there. It just didn't work out on this particular day. So I think there might be a temptation for some Bills fans to look at Sunday, and if Diggs has a big game, then maybe there's some trader's remorse. I don't think it should be that way. I don't care if Stefon Diggs has 3 touchdowns and 150 yards. It's one game against a non-division opponent. The Bills did what they had to do to move on from Diggs. No regrets. The die's been cast, and this is just one game for a team that is figuring out its offensive identity. And there have been some positive signs. There obviously was a very bad game on Sunday night, but anyways, I just think that the idea that it has to be built in a certain way is dangerous and can get you into a lot of arguments if you want to make a stand with a Bills fan or somebody who has an opinion about how it's got to be. I think that the everybody eats philosophy can work. I don't know if it will yet. We saw it work against the Jaguars. That doesn't seem like any great feat. It looks like the Jaguars are about ready to implode, and their coach might not last the season or last this month for that matter. But your thoughts on Diggs and what the Bills may be seeing on Sunday?
We were talking about it before we started recording. I'm a little surprised that it doesn't feel like that much of a big deal. When the trade happened and you knew that the Texans were on the Bills' schedule and you forecasted this game, I think a lot of us thought it would be a primetime game, a marquee game, and maybe that would change perceptions. But it doesn't feel like just any other meeting with an older player, but it doesn't feel like, the Sabres playing against Jack Eichel or I'm trying to think of the Bills comparable, but when Eric Moulds got traded to the Texans, or the first time the Bills played against Lee Evans, or some of these players that were great players here and then on other teams, maybe it's in a lot of those cases, the Bills were a struggling team, and there was some jealousy of seeing good Bills players thriving on other teams. And the Patriots used to pick up Bills cast-offs and do pretty well with them. Right. But it depends how it plays out. I do think Stefon Diggs has a big role in winning the game for the Texans. There might be some traitors' remorse from the Bills fans, at least, maybe not the Bills. And if the Bills continue to struggle to find reliable playmakers like they showed last week, I think it just underscores not that they need Stefon Diggs, but that they didn't replace Stefon Diggs with a comparable top receiver. And, you're hearing these rumblings that they might be sniffing around in Devontae Adams. I've even seen some rumors. I don't know. This is pure rumor. I don't think there's anything true to this, but Tyreek Hill, people are saying the Bills should make a, aggressive play to try to see if they can make that kind of trade. And I feel
the Dolphins aren't going to make that trade. Number one, the Bills can't afford it. The Bills would have to overpay in terms of whatever they give to the Dolphins in return. And also the Bills can't afford it. They're up against the salary cap. So the Tyreek Hill's available is an interesting point, not for the Bills, but just for the NFL in general, that he's potentially available. I don't want to say he is available, but Devontae Adams, 4 weeks into the season, requesting a trade or engineering his way out of Las Vegas. Tyreek Hill talking today with South Florida media about the rumors that he's hearing. He's addressing them. He's talking about them out loud. Anybody else with any other team? I don't know. Amari Cooper, if the Browns are feeling like their season's getting away with them with the way Deshaun Watson's been playing. These guys are available, and the Bills have a front office that is willing to go after players like this. They have an owner who's willing to sign off on it. They have a general manager who's willing to explore it and make offers. Unlike Doug Whaley and Ralph Wilson and Russ Brandon, I think that there is an ability to evaluate that this front office has, or at least a track record that they have more hits than misses, versus overpaying to get Sammy Watkins or whatever the different things that you do to try to fill that role that the Bills have as an organization had to do over the years. Anyways, I guess that's where I also come back to keep using that phrase, trader's remorse. Bills fans might have it on Sunday. They shouldn't. And that's part of the reason why, is because there's this, I think, feeling, or has been a feeling among Bills fans historically. And maybe this goes to your point, Jonah, about why it doesn't seem like it's as big of a deal. You waited so long to get a Stefon Diggs. There now doesn't seem to be that desperation of, we're never going to have another Stefon Diggs. The fact that Josh Allen is your quarterback, that Sean McDermott's the head coach, that Brandon Beane is the general manager, the Bills have won consecutive AFC East crowns for however many years. I think that there's probably some sort of acceptance among Bills fans, I hope, a healthy acceptance, that we can find guys. Like people are going to want to come and play for us. We don't have to trade for a Stefon Diggs necessarily because people don't want to come here due to Buffalo's reputation. Whether it's a trade before the deadline or an offseason acquisition, free agency, or an offseason trade, I think that the Bills are in a very healthy place when it comes to luring or getting these people to come and play. And I used to do these stories at the Pro Bowl every year for The Athletic, gauging the NFL's interest in Buffalo and the Siberian stigma, I used to call it. What would it take for you? And I would go around to all the different Pro Bowl free agents. What would it take for you to go to Buffalo? And some of them would just start laughing out loud and say, it's a non-starter. I would never want to go to Buffalo, whether it was because of the fact that they lost a lot, or their quarterback situation, or the weather, the small town stigma, New York taxes. There was all kinds of things. But as time went on, and the last time I did that story, maybe 3-4 years ago, it had turned, and it was because, hey, I would go play there. They have just as much a chance of getting me to sign a contract as any other team. And so Anyways, that's I think also going into the idea that you shouldn't miss Stefon Diggs because there, I guess to use a relationship term, this old flame or this, this breakup, however fresh this breakup is, I think that the Bills fans have gotten to there's plenty of more fish in the sea stage of acceptance than maybe they were when the schedule was released back in May. And by the way, just another quick point. You remember back in May and even recently, I hear people talking, this game should be in prime time. Why isn't this game on prime time? Well, it's not even getting CBS Sports' Sunday afternoon #1 crew. Tony Romo and Jim Nantz aren't even calling this game. It's not that it's faded, the whole thing. I get it. Stefon Diggs matters here. I don't think he even matters in Houston that much. He's their #2/#3 receiver behind Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And yes, he's gotten off to a great start and he's in the honeymoon phase and the fans like him, but they don't care about the Bills rivalry so much. I think it's the only place this is a big blockbuster matchup is in Buffalo. That being said, I don't get that sense anymore. I'm talking to people out at, at Elmo's or wherever, or out at the facility. And I'm asking them, like, what is left to be said about Stefon Diggs that I can write about this week? And they kind of shrug and say, like, I don't care. It's just not that it's just another game, but what hasn't been said?
Well, maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's all been worked out emotionally for a lot of the Bills fans and people in the media, and Stefon Diggs isn't making spicy comments to kind of advance the story. That everybody's being polite and respectful and using the word love a lot in their descriptions of each other and their experience together. But I don't know. I've seen a sense of that from some fans. I think a lot depends on how this game goes. If the Bills win and if everybody eats and they spread the ball around and the rookie receiver Keon Coleman catches a touchdown, Bills fans are going to feel wonderful about the direction of the franchise. If the Texans win and Stefon Diggs has a big game and the Bills are struggling to get the ball to the wide receivers and it looks like they really miss Stefon Diggs, I think it changes a lot of how Bills fans interpret that trade. But I have noticed a bit of a sense. I think Stefon Diggs is missed in a way that is a little bit non-football related, even though it's not an off the field type thing. But he was a star player, a star personality, one of the not as high profile as Josh Allen, but one of the more high profile and one of the more all-pro great players that the Bills have had in a number of years. And there was that, it's been more than a year since this was the case, but there was that very outward friendship and bond between Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs. It's an election season, and I'm not seeing any Diggs Allen signs on people's lawns and the celebrations and the Sports Illustrated for Kids cover. I think that Bills fans miss that maybe as much as a #1 wide receiver and the effect it has on the offense in winning and losing. And something I saw, one of my favorite accounts on Twitter, and I want to make sure I'm letting everybody know that I'm quoting the Twitter account's name, and this isn't my commentary here, but the Twitter account's name is Dirtbag Queer. And there's a lot of funny tweets coming out of that account, coming out of that handle. And this person did kind of a montage video of all the old fun and happy moments with Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs, and it was set to the Chapel Rowan song, Good Luck, Babe, and there were people commenting about how they shed tears over that. And so I think that that's what Bills fans are missing. And if Stefon Diggs is now having that happy relationship, maybe Stefon Diggs has moved on to his new flame a little bit quicker than the Bills and the Bills fans have, because they're still searching for that #1 receiver. I think that could sting this weekend, but it all depends on how the game goes. If the Bills win, then I don't think anybody misses anything. But I also don't think Stefon Diggs is going to miss being on the Bills if he doesn't win this game this weekend.
Although it would be 2 losses against his former team, I did find it interesting that despite losing that game against the Vikings, 34-7, by the way, it wasn't even close. Stefon Diggs talked at his locker stall after the game, talked about how happy he was for the Vikings, and it was an emotional return to that stadium and how it surprised him, how emotional he was. And I mean, again, maybe I'm quibbling, but he didn't sound like the guy who storms out of locker rooms and gets really upset over winning. Like winning is all that matters. Remember, that was what all the people would rationalize of why Stefon Diggs is seen throwing down his tablet or yelling at Joe Brady and Josh Allen a couple of years ago in the Bengals game, or storming out of the locker room and needing to be pulled back in by Tank Johnson, and all the different things, yelling at Sean McDermott during the Browns game in Detroit. I mean, there's all kinds of different things, the cryptic tweets, etc. And everybody would just chalk it up as, man, he's just a pure apex predator, competitor, alpha, you name it. That's all he wants. He just wants to win, that type of stuff. Well, he just got his ass handed to him 34-7 against the Vikings. And he was, I won't say he was okay with it. He talked about all the different things that they need to work on, but the fact that he even granted an interview at his locker stall after the game, which he wouldn't do in Buffalo, that was a thing he didn't do. It was either news conference or nothing. And after losses, that was rare. I'd have to go and look. He didn't talk after games much at all. But maybe it had something to do with the fact that he led everybody in targets that game. 10 catches on 12 targets, 94 yards. He threw a pass in that game. Maybe Stefon Diggs was okay with it because he got his. And maybe he's upset with losing when he is combining that with losing and not getting his. I mean, go back and look at all the different games in which he's been frustrated. Is it because they're losing, or is it because he's not getting his? And maybe winning takes the edge off of that when you're winning and not getting yours. But it seems as though when they loses and he gets his, he's able to move on a lot easier than before. So I bring this up because I wonder how much he's in the ear, or what kind of leverage he may have with Houston coach DeMeco Ryans or offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick, that going into the game against the Minnesota Vikings, he had, looking at it here, 8 more targets. No, I'm sorry, only 2 more targets, but 6 more catches than Nico Collins. And of course, that has to do with what Brian Flores is doing as the Vikings defensive coordinator to take Collins out of the game, opening things up for Diggs, etc. But how much is Stefon Diggs able to say, hey man, I need it. I need to be fed this game. This is where I gotta thrive. And if that's the case against the Bills and they grant him that could work well for the Bills. Or the Bills might just say, hey, you know what, Steph? And this is what might hurt. Maybe the Bills, because they can't cover everybody, despite Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas being really good this year so far through 4 games. But we already mentioned DeMar Hamlin and Cole Bishop is the potential starting safety tandem. And we don't know if Taron Johnson and Terrell Bernard are going to be back. Terrell Bernard can help in the coverage game. If the Bills just let Stefon Diggs go off, that's a possibility. If they just want to take Nico Collins out of the game, they might say, go ahead, Steph, get your 12, 14 targets and all your catches and whatever. That could be actual strategy for the Bills that would be beneficial to them. It certainly worked for the Vikings to the tune of a 27-point victory just 2 weeks ago, in which they limited Collins and let Diggs have a day.
Yeah, the Bills generally play defense in a style that doesn't take one receiver out of the game, although they have taken receivers out of the game, but they play, a lot of zone defense, and the corners stay on their sides. They don't shadow receivers. And if Stefon Diggs lines up in the slot,
They do sometimes.
The slot corner. They do sometimes, but generally they don't do that a lot to specifically take one receiver out of the game and make the game plan about that. And I mean, that would probably be a mistake to do that for Stefon Diggs when Nico Collins is really maybe the receiver that you want to put extra attention on. Or maybe the Texans, I don't know if Tank Dell is going to play or not. He didn't play the last game, but the Texans might have too many receivers to focus anything on one. And I think that's part of the reason that Stefon Diggs is thriving, and maybe part of his attitude is that he's in a situation he never was in really with the Bills, where he's not the number one receiver getting double teamed and all the attention. And he's
a lot of his passes are very close to the line of scrimmage too. He's not going downfield at all.
Right. But I think that allows him to make a lot of plays and get a lot of passes. And if he were getting frustrated in the past with having to run down the field and take a safety with him just to get somebody else open, he's not being asked to do that as much. He's also in a contract year now and not in a position, I wouldn't say he has to repair his image, but I think he has to be protective of his image of being a good teammate, because when he's a free agent, that's going to factor into how much interest he gets in the next contract that he's
Similar
able to get.
to Terrell Owens when he signed the 1-year deal with the Bills. It was a rehabilitation year.
Right.
Because he was considered a problem. And if you want to, you got to be on your best behavior, but that should be okay for Stefon Diggs. He takes him a while to wear out his welcome. You're able to reconcile each of the little microaggressions and passive aggressive things. You're able to deal with that. It's the accumulation of that gets tiresome, that just exhausts, whether it be the coaching staff or the quarterback or the receiver room or whatever.
Yeah. What I find interesting about Stefon Diggs, what I've always found interesting about him, and really as it relates to this podcast and the conversations that we have, is how many times has a Diggs topic come up, something he said or something that was written about him or a mini controversy, and we've kind of said, it's not as big of a deal as it seems or that everybody else is making it. And then we go 30, 40 minutes talking about it, all the ins and outs. There's something about him and his personality and his role on these teams and his character in the league that there's just a lot to talk about, and a lot to analyze, and a lot to think about and wonder about and speculate about. Everybody's got an opinion about Stefon Diggs. And I think in part of the way, I think that's what makes him fun and interesting to cover and to be a fan of, or watch football and be a football fan with him involved in the game. And maybe in other ways it made it, incompatible to be a teammate or have him be a part of the Bills after 4 years of that.
Von Miller, the 4-game suspension, Jonah, he got off to a good start. He had a sack in each of the 3 games, first 3 games, and then only 9 snaps against the Ravens because, hey, the Ravens were just going to run the ball. They weren't in obvious passing downs much. Von Miller just wasn't to be used much. And here he is suspended for the next 4 games. I think a lot of people forgot about the domestic violence arrest last year in which he was accused by his pregnant girlfriend of assaulting her, and the case faded away. I'll be honest, I did not see anything official from the DA, and maybe I missed it. I do know that John Wara, the Associated Press, had reported that the case, that there wouldn't be charges filed, but I'd only really seen it come from Von Miller's side. So I don't really know where that stands. And generally, I think when the NFL comes down with a suspension, generally speaking, it's once the case is closed. So that way nothing new comes up. So maybe they had some word. Anyways, I don't want to quibble about that, but the NFL decides that, well, even if a jury might have trouble believing a witness who recanted, which Von Miller's girlfriend did, all it takes is one juror out of the gallery to be unconvinced, and then you have a hung trial or a not guilty verdict. I don't know. But Roger Goodell is a jury of one. And all the NFL has to do is decide, well, we believe what she said before she recanted. We believe, but we don't really know what goes into it. And that's another thing that, it's semantics, but we deal in semantics as a career. And a lot of people initially just stated he was getting suspended because of the arrest. That's not necessarily true. It could be related to the arrest, perhaps. And I'm just using this as a hypothetical. I'm not saying that I know anything, but maybe during the course of the investigation, the NFL found him to not be truthful. Maybe they unearthed something else. We don't know. But the investigation was because of the arrest. And John Worrell, again, to credit him, had a source that said that this was directly related to the arrest, that case, but we don't really know what went into the NFL's decision. Domestic violence suspensions are 6 games. This was only 4. Why was it 4 instead of 0 if no charges were filed? So there's all kinds of things that we don't know specifically about the NFL's decision here. And according to my sources at One Bills Drive, the Bills don't get to know either. I don't know, but
Well,
he's not around for 4 weeks.
a couple things that I wouldn't say I know, but I think. Well, this wasn't, he has a prior in this type of situation, at least, it being in the news. And if you remember the origins of this personal conduct policy, it was about the number and the volume of domestic violence cases and players behaving badly that were not getting legislated properly in the courts, but it was really making the NFL look bad, allowing players to play and not sanctioning players because they were able to, avoid charges and fight the legal side of things. And it was looking very bad that the NFL wasn't able to police their own players in some ways. And I don't know how well the personal conduct policy has worked in preventing NFL players from committing bad acts, but it exists to protect the NFL's image mostly. And Von Miller, whether he faces charges, whether he did anything wrong or not, did get arrested, did have some sordid details, or turn himself into police on those charges, did have some sordid details get reported. And with this not being the very first time that that's happened in his career, I believe the NFL decided that, enough was enough. You've colored outside the lines a little too far and a little too many times. And, he violated the personal conduct policy, even if we don't know exactly what laws were violated or what he did or did not do in a criminal sense.
Yeah, and he was accused of something that was also, I should have looked it up. I guess I knew we were going to be talking about it, so I don't want to just guess out of my memory what it was. He had a PED suspension previously. That's totally different lane than domestic violence. But yes, I believe he had a situation that had to be investigated. It made headlines, if even only TMZ. But TMZ gets a lot of stuff first and a lot of stuff right. No matter what you think of how salacious that website is, they don't do a lot of retractions. But you want to Google it, feel free. I have a pretty good idea of what it is, but if I'm wrong, then it would be silly for me to say it here on the podcast, because if I don't have it quite right, I don't want to impugn anybody or say something that's sensational when I'm not remembering it correctly. But yeah, I think that it opens up an opportunity for some other players. Obviously, Von Miller's somebody that we've talked about it before. I don't even know if we talked about it on the podcast. He does all these news conferences. I don't listen. Yes, I know that the Bills find him to be an important player because of how much he's paid and people love him in the building and all these other things. But between his number one, this accusation was ugly enough. And I'm unsure what happened. I'm not going to say that he did it. Maybe, but this is the mother of a couple of his kids, and they've been together for a while. And if she's accused him of these things, and if she's, the type of person who accuses and recants and, whatever, it sounds like a mess, and he can make some changes in his life if he so chooses, that he hasn't done. But it's also on a less nefarious tone, the guarantees that he's always making about an acquisition, or the Bills are going to do this, or I'm going to play, or I'm not injured. I mean, the guy's just not believable to me. And so when he's holding a news conference, I just don't have any interest in using his words in a story of mine, because again, I'm not calling him a liar regarding the arrest. But the guy just says so many things that aren't true. So I guess there's some nuance into what I'm saying there. But anyways, I mean, so Von Miller with 3 sacks in 3 games heading into Baltimore last week. Yeah, good story, but that's a good story for somebody else to tell. I just, if Von Miller does something, if he sacks Patrick Mahomes in the 4th quarter of the AFC Championship game, maybe I write a story about that. But as of now, I mean, Von Miller is, I don't know. He's irrelevant to me. even though he's in the headlines. I mean, he's irrelevant to me, I'm saying. I mean, he might make a difference for the Bills. The Bills might actually need him to get to the where they want to go this year. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, Von Miller.
Football wise, I'm not sure how to react, and I find it kind of interesting to unpack it a little bit. Because on one hand, Von Miller is another, at one time, an all-pro caliber player and one of the Bills' highest paid players. And
probably a Hall of Famer.
Biggest stars, right. So
Super Bowl MVP.
The Bills have had a lot of injuries and a lot of injuries on defense. Maybe the volume of injuries isn't abnormal to what another NFL team has, but it seems like the Bills have been losing their best players on defense, one after the other, more so than another team does. And Von Miller sort of falls in that bucket as one of their best players. And this is another one after losing Matt Milano, and Terrell Bernard and Taron Johnson might be coming back, but they've been out, and different other star players that weren't brought back in the offseason or were released. It just seems like another stacking that on top of that. But Von Miller isn't a starter anymore. He only played 9 snaps against the Ravens. He's a situational pass rusher. He's seems to have recovered from the injury and be a pass rushing weapon for the Bills, but he hasn't had a game where he's been terrorizing the quarterback all day long and really looking like the all-pro Super Bowl MVP version of Von Miller yet. And the Bills haven't really utilized him in that way yet. So it's kind of unclear how much the Bills are going to miss him, how much they're going to be hoping to have him back.
He's also not a captain. He was a captain before. Now, I know that the system's a little different where Sean McDermott decided to go with just one on each side of the ball, but he's not the defensive captain.
Yeah, his leadership role seems to be lessened over the past 2 seasons with the injury and maybe some other factors. It'd just be really interesting to see how much the Bills are get him back. He's probably going to play. He's going to be active and he's going to play as soon as he comes back from this suspension. But how big of a role he has, how important he is, or if the Bills kind of move on a little bit without him and he comes back and he's playing less and less. And, I don't know if he'll be utilized as lightly as he was a year ago, but the Bills played some pretty good defense without him at times last year. They had Leonard Floyd and some different players to replace him. But I could also see, because the Bills are thinner at defensive end, especially as far as speed on the edge, that they could go through this 4-game period and be like, we sure could use a healthy Von Miller when he's able to get back out there. But I don't know. And this is another thing I'm speculating here. I mean, are the Bills surprised or disappointed in Von Miller in any way, the way this played out with the suspension? Does that lessen the trust factor and how much they want to use him when he comes back?
I don't get that sense. Had some with discussions that I've had. I don't get that sense. The Bills aren't going to cut Von Miller. They do get some savings with the suspension towards the salary cap, about $330,000 or something like that, which some of it had to be dedicated to the guy they just signed. So it's not a lot. They're not going to cut him, is what I'm led to believe. So if they're not going to cut him,
but de-emphasize him in a way, or kind of move on from him a little bit.
But if you're going to keep him, you're going to play him. I mean, if you're not going to play him, then you might as well cut him. So, I don't want to get
help the Bills. I don't know. I just want to ask you, does it help the Bills in a sense that he's going to miss 4 games and maybe he's less involved when he comes back for a little while, that he's less likely to get double-digit sacks and the bonus money that would be on next year's salary cap?
I don't know that. I'm not sure about it. I'm not sure with the restructured contract that he did in the offseason where all those different things are. The fact that he was suspended, I'm unsure about the language in his contract in terms of voidable guarantees. Usually a suspension voids guarantees.
Well, I just mean the performance incentives he has, where his contract was redone really, where he's basically getting paid per sack, and he gets big money if he gets over 10.5 sacks, and if he doesn't, the Bills save some money there, and that's, I think all those bonuses are going to get pushed into next year's cap, and there's maybe a way where financially the Bills are better off getting a 13, 12 game season out of Von Miller than they would have in a 16 or 17 game season.
Jonah, before we talk about the Sabres and UB, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your Men Wear Pink campaign for the American Cancer Society. You've been highly active this I want to say this month, but it goes back a couple weeks, right? I know this is the month for it, but you've been gearing up and doing some events, the celebrity bartending out at New York Beer Project in Orchard Park, and all the different things that are going on. What can you tell us about it?
Well, yeah, it's an initiative in the month of October, but we did kind of get started with an early launch of, raising awareness and trying to raise some money for the American Cancer Society to support breast cancer research, awareness, patient services. My sister, Hannah, who's 32 years old, was diagnosed with breast cancer in the spring when she was 31 at the time. It was a pretty shocking and difficult situation for my family, and she's being treated at Roswell and doing pretty well with the treatments, but we're not over that yet. And through some relationships I had with the American Cancer Society that runs the local Coaches vs. Cancer chapter and different events that they've done, I got involved in what we do is we wear pink all month long and make social media posts about it and try to get attention that way that then can be activated into donations for the American Cancer Society and put into the overall pot for fighting against breast cancer. And there's different things that we'll be doing. You mentioned the guest bartending. I was out at New York Beer Project in Orchard Park with John Scott and Sal Capaccio and Jixter and some other nice fellows wearing pink on October 1st to kick off the event. We got another event like that coming up at the New York Beer Project in Lockport on October 15th. Sports City in Buffalo on Niagara Street on October 23rd. Those are like happy hour times, 5:30, 6 o'clock. And yeah, I'm having a little bit of fun with picking out outfits or picking out pieces of pink clothing or things like that, and thinking of creative ways I can do social media posts to get some attention, and just trying to, support a good cause. And hopefully some listeners can maybe join us at those bartending events. They call it bartending, but we really just stand there trying to pour a few beers and not get in the real bartender's ways. But we'll be there. You can bring some cash and stuff it in my pink clothing and things like that. That'll all go back into the cause. And maybe we can even do something kind of informal. If you're a listener of this podcast, you see us out at Elmo's, or you see me wearing this pink ribbon, which you can tap your phone on it to donate if you want to do it that way. And maybe we can do that with some of the people we see out. And as it relates to this podcast, I don't know about you, but I think but maybe a little less than me. There's a lot of people that listen to this podcast or watch the YouTube, and I don't know. We don't get a report of exactly who's watching. It's not like your
Right.
Instagram story where you can see exactly who watches every little video. And even friends of mine or people I know, I see them out and they tell me, oh, I listen to your podcast or I watch the YouTube videos, and I had no idea. So this is a way maybe if you're a listener, to let us know that you're listening and you're supporting. And, if you make a donation, you maybe put a little TGAF note on that, or send me a DM, send Tim a DM, tweet at us. If you see us out at Elmo's or one of these bar attending things, let us know that you're a listener of this podcast, or you watch on YouTube. And, while also making a donation that supports the American Cancer Society, which does great things for all different types of cancers. But this month, a lot of the focus is on breast cancer and wearing pink. And while doing that, you can also kind of show some love and show some support for this podcast in the same way.
Show more love to the American Cancer Society than to this podcast.
Well, let's say you can show your love and a financial contributions to the American Cancer Society, but you can also let us know that you're listening.
Yes,
it can be a way we kind of, connect with our audience a little bit.
That'd be nice, but that's all right. And whatever platforming we can do for the American Cancer Society and Men Wear Pink campaign, we will do.
There's a lot of love to go around. But let me ask you this, Tim. There's another reason to wear pink today on October 3rd. You know what that is?
I don't.
You never seen the movie Mean Girls?
I did see it once, but I don't know. Oh, actually, I've seen that one a couple of times. But I don't get the reference.
Well, they wear pink on Wednesdays in the Mean Girls multiverse. And then there's a scene where Lindsay Lohan's character gets asked what day it is, and she says, well, it's October 3rd. And that's kind of taken on a life of its own online where people wear pink on October 3rd. I was actually at the Channel 4 station today, and someone had asked me if that was why I was wearing pink. And I was like, well, no, it's actually for another reason. But it happens to be October 3rd, and maybe next Wednesday I'll be wearing pink again, or sporting pink in some way. And we can say we wear pink on Wednesdays for the Mean Girls and for Men Wear Pink campaign.
Support this cause. However you can do it. Go to these events. Check Jonah's Twitter feed for information. He is on Twitter at LeBronstein, like LeBron James, but Lebron. In fact, if you type in LeBron, no, maybe that's just me because I follow you.
It comes
You
up
have a
before
weird
LeBron
thing, though.
James.
You have a
Yeah,
weird
but
thing
you know
where
what?
your Twitter thing comes up. There's some algorithm that picks up your Twitter handle, right?
I mean, it might be because you follow me, but I think LeBron is like King James or something on Twitter. So maybe I do have a bit of an advantage there.
Okay.
King James, yeah. So there's a team LeBron, and it might be his marketing people.
LeBronstein at LeBronstein, and you can find more information specific to Jonah's campaign initiative and help him out. Is there any kind of competition, Jonah? Are you in with other sports people or broadcast people?
They keep score. There's a leaderboard. I'm in second place right now.
Who's in first?
I'd have to look it up. Shields is his last name. I forget the first name. Local businessman. I have a big lead over the rest of the media people involved, which is maybe what I'm possibly being competitive about. It's not a contest to where who wins matters any more than all of us working together to raise as much money as we can. But when they keep score, people get competitive. So I would like to be higher up on that leaderboard than most, and higher up than my peers in the media. And even I know some other peers in the media that have done this in the past, and I've been asking around and getting those stats and trying to see how many of them I can outraise. And for me, I'm just kind of having fun. I hesitate to say fun because it's a very disheartening situation with my sister and the disease in general, and just being down at Roswell the other day and just realizing how many people are battling cancer, people I know my age or younger that are battling colon cancer and things like that. But that aside, it has been kind of fun to spread my wings a little bit on social media, get out of my comfort zone and do some posts. I've probably taken 2 or 3 selfies in my life before this week, and now I'm like experimenting with different angles and mirrors and different ways to take my own picture. And I tried to take a picture of my right hand today with my left hand, and I don't know if you've ever tried to do something with your left hand that you normally do with your right hand, but it's awkward and it's difficult, and it doesn't always get the job done as effectively. And I learned that today with my camera phone.
Yeah. Brushing your teeth left-handed, or your opposite hand, I should say, is always a trick. Wiping is another one that I always hear is a problem.
Yeah,
you never know until you're forced to do it.
Yeah.
Well, everybody support this cause. Help Jonah climb that leaderboard. Whoever that guy is in first place, let's bring him down to Chinatown.
And make sure you let us know. I really want to know if anybody donates because they heard about this on the podcast. Let both Tim and I know who you are, that you were listening, and hopefully that gives us a little bit of interaction and connection with our audience, because sometimes, and especially you might get a little bit more of that running the accounts and seeing some of that. I don't know how much of that you see, but I don't see a whole lot of that. I'm often surprised to hear people I know actually listen to the podcast, but I think there's a number of folks out there that do.
Jonah, we've been at it for over an hour already. We haven't talked about the Sabres yet, so maybe we'll just want to touch on them quickly. But they open Friday at 1 p.m. against the Devils in Prague, and then Saturday at 10 a.m. How are you going to watch these games? You got any plans? Are you going to do call off work, go to a bar somewhere? Are you just going to watch them in your pajamas? What are we doing?
Well, I'm going to have to find a place to watch them. I can't watch them at home. My TV picture just went black yesterday and made a power surge sign, but the audio was still working. So something's wrong with my TV. I need to get a new TV. I'm not equipped to watch that at home. I'm going to find another location to watch that. Maybe I'll even go down to the watch party they're having at the arena on Saturday, kind of see what the fan experience is like. I think, not for me, but for the Sabres fans, I think it's kind of a cool experience to get whatever the opposite of Sabres after dark is. Sabres for brunch on Saturday, and maybe getting out of work early or getting to sit at your desk and watch a Sabres game instead of doing your work is on a weekday is kind of a cool experience. And the Sabres are getting started a few days before the rest of the NHL in a bit of a spotlight in this global series. It's Lindy Ruff coaching against the team that just fired him last year. An opportunity for the Sabres to get off to a good start early on in the season and then have some home games. It's a back-to-back with a quick turnaround, which really does lend itself to one team winning and one team losing, and a 2-point trip out of those two games. But if the Sabres can somehow get 3 or 4 points, I think that's an excellent start to the season. And just to see this new look line up in a way with the new structure that Lindy Ruff has put in place and the new forwards in the bottom six and a new, I think, attitude in the locker room with a lot of the players and some maturity that just comes from age, but also seems to be rubbing off from Lindy Ruff and his coaching style. They've looked excellent in the preseason, especially the games that the main roster has played. And it'll be interesting to see how much that carries over into the regular season. And if the traveling doesn't cause any kind of hangover where the Sabres come back and play poorly after having to come back from overseas next week.
Yeah, let's leave it there, Jonah. UB football's in a bye. Maybe we'll come back and talk about them next week. Big win over ranked Northern Illinois, and then an all-time history, at least in the program D1 history, all-time loss for them. So we can sort that out some other time. There's enough on everybody's plate as it is. Anything else you just want to touch on before
you don't want to talk? You don't want to talk high school football? This is a big weekend. We got a couple championship previews. St. Francis and Canisius, they've met 13 years in a row in their league championship game, and they play a regular season game that'll probably decide the number 1 seed and home field advantage. And Bennett Lancaster, a team that they've won the last 8 Class AA championships between the two of them, and they play Friday night. So I'll be going from Sabres to high school football games with a quick turnaround Friday night and Saturday afternoon.
The St. Francis, who's a St. Francis Canisius?
That's at St. Francis on Saturday afternoon.
Saturday afternoon. Okay, I want to make sure that wasn't both, because you mentioned it. If people do want to go out and check it out, that would be a great thing to do. Great fall weather, great football weather. Go out there and have a Saturday afternoon football game, or Friday night too. But I just you mentioned Friday night for Lancaster and Bennett. Wanted to make sure we mentioned the time and day for the other game too. All right. Thanks everybody for checking out Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK CPAs and Business Consultants. Please like, subscribe, comment. We always appreciate that. But more importantly, go to Jonah's social media, do whatever you can to support Men Wear Pink for the American Cancer Society. And Jonah, great job with that. And we'll be seeing everybody soon.
The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400, or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions.